are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Monday, November 1st. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by Yahoo Sports. We've got 9 games on the docket today. Lots to talk about. Kind of a gross slate. I did not enjoy going through it earlier this morning on the process, 6:30 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday, by the way. But we're playing it nonetheless. Let's start here. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, notification bell, all that good stuff. Adam, how are you? How was your weekend?
I'm good. Weekend was good. Had a good hockey weekend, had a good football weekend. So, yeah, it's been a fun week. Hopefully we can keep it going.
Yeah. Basketball, good for you. Hockey, good for you. Football, good for you. Yeah, I'm assuming MMA didn't work out.
I don't even remember.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, GPPs for MMA, you either win or you don't.
Yeah.
Like, that one doesn't matter all that much.
I think I broke even.
Okay.
I know if the Scherer fight had gone like perfectly for me, I could win the big tournament. Because I was in first going into that fight, and I needed like Blagojevich to score less than 106 and to Scherer to score less than 67. So just like a low scoring Blagojevich win. But that obviously didn't happen.
No, it did not.
I think I like broke even still.
Fair enough. All righty. Look, here's the deal. We've got 9 games on the slate. We don't have a ton of time to screw around. So normally I'm all for screwing around. But in this case, I think we actually have to just dive into this slate. So I am ready if you are.
Yep.
I lied to you. I'm not ready yet. I'm going to grab our ownership.
Well, you knew that I wasn't actually ready either. So.
Well, yeah, that's fair.
I'm usually not ready until about 4 p.m.
Yeah, I don't even know if you're ready at 4 p.m. because at that point in time, you're like, I'm in the middle of making my hockey lineups.
That's a good point.
So
yeah, Lofty loves that every time he asks how I'm doing. I was like, oh man, I'm building hockey lines.
Yeah. All right, here we go. We are kicking it off. Ownership is in. Cleveland Cavaliers at the Charlotte Hornets, 224 total. Cavs are 4-point underdogs. We will start on the Cleveland side. Not too much to worry about in this one. Isaac Okoro is out. That's really the only news we have for Cleveland, and it doesn't appear that we have any news for Charlotte either. So from a Cleveland perspective, Colin Sexton pulling the most ownership. He is 26% owned at DraftKings, where he's only 5,900. I completely agree with that ownership. He is underpriced for that particular salary. If I'm looking at anybody else, I'm happy to get to Evan Mobley for 6,600 or 6,700. Darius Garland looks okay, but I think Sexton's the best option. I'd like to say more about Jared Allen, but there's 8 million centers to roster now, and it's really hard to prioritize any one individual, although I do like the price. But Sexton's the star here.
Yeah, I think Sexton looks really good. Disappointing game against Phoenix last time out, but that was just, I think, a throwaway game as far as not really wanting to take anything from it. I do think that Okoro being out benefits Sexton. We saw him play like 37 and a half minutes the first game that Okoro missed, followed it up with 18.7 minutes against Phoenix, but that's a game where the Suns went on a 19-2 run to close the first half. Then they went on a 27-6 run to open the second half, and Sexton never came back in. Jared Allen never came back in. Evan Mobley never came back in. The only starters that played at all in the fourth quarter were Markkanen and Darius Garland. I think that was just, and like the game doesn't end up looking like a blowout because it was only a 9-point win for Phoenix, but you just had Cleveland basically empty the bench and say, yeah, okay, if you guys can bring us back, then cool, but we're not running our starters out there. So I still expect to get a lot of minutes from Colin Sexton here. I'm kind of just disregarding that last game. So I think he looks good. The price tags on Garland and Mobley are fine as well. But even Rubio and Markkanen, I think in tournaments you can get to. Rubio has been very productive for Cleveland so far. Assist percentage is up around 43%. His usage is up from where it's been in the past. And he's someone that just isn't going to get ownership because he is a risky play. Whenever you have somebody coming off the bench that you're assuming plays, 26 minutes or so, it's going to be risky, but I think he does have a nice ceiling there. Markkanen, playing around 30 minutes, I think is fine. So Cleveland's been a team all season long that I think has been overpriced. Now their prices are correcting. I think that basically any of Mobley, Garland, Allen, Rubio, Markkanen, you can make a case for in tournaments. Sexton, I think, is the one that stands out the most out of that group where he's probably even cash viable. Obviously, I haven't built a lineup yet, but the price looks good.
Yeah, I would say that is certainly cash viable. He was my 5th overall play coming out of my Sims this morning. So he's certainly going to be a guy and he's getting the ownership. So stands to reason. But I think you explained it perfectly. Sexton's the only guy that his price is like a little off. The rest of these guys are all just sort of where they should be in a matchup that's not all that bad. So you'll get some, but you got to pick those guys out of it's random. Whether you like Mobley or
a lot of this year. for a lot of this year, I think they've been actively overpriced. Now it's just like, okay, they're pretty much priced where they should be. If they have their average game, you're going to not care one way or the other that you have them, but there's at least a path to them having success, with the exception of Sexton, where if he has his average game, I think you're going to want him at 5,900.
Yep. Anything else on the Cleveland side?
Nope.
On the Charlotte side, looks like it's just going to be business as usual for this team. They are back to full strength. Terry Rozier appears to be played 33 minutes, their last time out. I do think it's interesting that this past game, PJ Washington played the straight backup center, no minutes at the 4. I'm surprised that they're doing that. I don't know why they're doing it, but apparently they are. If I just look at Charlotte for today, not a lot standing out. The prices on DraftKings are, to me, really problematic. Hayward's $600 more expensive than he is on FanDuel. Miles Bridges is just expensive. $8,500 for a LaMelo. That's $700 more than FanDuel. Rozier is $700 more expensive than FanDuel. I don't get to these guys at all on DK. I'm happy to get to LaMelo or Gordon Hayward on FanDuel. I don't want to pay the full freight for Bridges at this point.
Yeah, there's not much for me here. That's 2 games in a row, by the way, with Washington that he hasn't played any minutes alongside Plumlee. I don't know if it's getting him back, in shape after he missed a couple of games thing or what, but they do have a lot of bodies in this rotation that they seem to want to use. So one way or the other, not looking to Washington here, but him being back makes it so I think you knock a few minutes off of Plumlee. It's unlikely you're getting 32 minutes from him. When you have PJ Washington backing him up, it's much more likely you're getting like a 26-22 split or something like that. Kelly Oubre had a good game off the bench, but he's 5,700. I'm not like he's still going to get minutes and he's still going to get probably more usage playing off the bench, but not a spot that I really need to get to. I tweeted last night that Bridges is just going to be that guy that ruins me all season long if he keeps doing this. The usage is up this year. Like, you have to give him that. It's in the mid-20s, but he's also played games without Rozier. He's played games without PJ Washington. LaMelo has not played as many minutes per game so far this year as I think you get going forward. All of those things should have a negative impact on Bridges' usage. Even if you I think it's very likely that he ends up with a higher usage rate this year than he had last year at like 18 or 19%. But I don't think he keeps carrying a 25% usage rate. Last night he had 9 assists. I don't think that's a normal thing. Like, he's a good player that's playing a lot of minutes, so he's going to give you some good games. But I think he's priced at this point to where I'm not going there. LaMelo is always a viable tournament option just based on how good he is and how many fantasy points per minute he scores, but he's priced for his ceiling now at 8,500 as well. It's kind of like if he goes out there and plays 32 minutes, it's pretty unlikely he gives you a score that doesn't actively hurt you. And then, even if he goes out there and gets 50, that's obviously good, but it's not even like it's unlikely that you have to have 50 points from someone at 8,500 to win a tournament. Like, it's a good score. It helps, but it's not like it's slate breaker or anything. So, yeah, there's just on DraftKings, I don't really see anything at these prices.
I'm with you. I don't have anything else to add. We can keep it moving and go to the San Antonio Spurs taking on the Indiana Pacers. Unfortunately, Doug McDermott out for the Spurs, so no revenge narrative there. Still no TJ Warren for Indiana. Jeremy Lamb is doubtful for the Pacers. Malcolm Brogdon and Karis LeVert both questionable. I fully expect LeVert to play. He didn't play. So he came back, played 1 game. I think that with the rest, he's going to be fine. We'll see, I guess. But my anticipation is that Karis LeVert will be playing today. Malcolm Brogdon, who the hell knows? I do have him in. We're going to start on the San Antonio side. Derek White, 6,100 on FanDuel, 6,400 on DraftKings. He is 19% owned on DK and 32% owned on FanDuel. This was a guy that came in as my number 1 contender on FanDuel for today. I like going to Derek White. I think the ownership might be a little high, but it's certainly warranted. Maybe a little DeJounte Murray at 8,900. After that, I'm probably not getting to Spurs.
I think White's fine at 6,400. You have a big price gap down between him and DeJounte Murray. That was something that was keeping me from rostering White early in the season, because it was just like, why the hell would I play Derek White at pretty high ownership when I could just play DeJounte Murray at similar ownership? But now you do have that really big gap. So at 6,400, I think White's fine. He's not a huge priority for me. He's about a fantasy point per minute guy this year, 0.95 DraftKings points per minute. We've seen DeJounte Murray's usage go up a little bit. White's at 18%. Assist percentage is solid at 26.4%, but taking the backseat to Murray there as well, and then doesn't rebound nearly as well. So he's kind of just there. I think that Keldon Johnson is okay at 5,700. Pirtle's okay at 7,200. He's having a very, very strong year. We're seeing him play really well and play big minutes. 1.13 DraftKings points per minute is second highest on the team behind DeJounte Murray's 1.3. So nothing that really stands out here. I think Pirtle, White, Johnson are fine. Murray gives you a high ceiling, but he's also getting to a price point where he's pretty difficult to trust.
All righty. Anything else for San Antonio?
I mean, not really. I guess like Devin Vassell at 4,300 is okay. We still Thad Young was sort of in the rotation last game.
Yeah.
He played a total of 16 minutes. He didn't sub in for the first time until there were 7.5 minutes left in the second quarter. But then he played like a normal rotation in the third and fourth. I don't know what to make of that. It's a spot. I think we're getting to the point where if you're playing 150 lineups in large field tournaments, you can start to speculate on Thaddeus Young because he's a very productive player when he's on the floor. The only question is he going to be on the floor? If he gets that, like the second half rotation last game where he just clearly was like a bench player behind Keldon Johnson, if he plays like 18 to 20 minutes at 4,300, he's got a pretty nice path to success. There's also just still that risk where he plays 8 minutes or something because we really have no idea what the hell they're doing. So he's very, very risky. But what's going to happen is there's going to be a game where Thaddeus Young plays like 24 minutes, breaks a slate wide open. And then from that point forward, he's underpriced. You can't get him at low ownership. So it's kind of a situation where like you accept that there's going to be that pretty often he's going to just wreck your lineup because he doesn't get the minutes you're hoping for. But the upside of getting him the first time he plays 24 minutes is pretty high.
On the Indiana side, like I said, it's going to be a little bit difficult to try to hash this out. We don't have official word on LeVert or Brogdon. I'm putting them both in. I took Jeremy Lamb out of my lineup for right now. Guys that stand out most to me, Sabonis, 9,200 on FanDuel. That's a price tag that certainly works. He's 10-1 on DraftKings. A little bit harder to go to. Not necessarily a no play, but much clearly, or like very clearly, Sabonis on FanDuel is in play at 9,200. Duarte's okay. Miles Turner's getting a ton of ownership, 33% owned on FanDuel at 6K now that he's got dual eligibility, 16% on DraftKings. It looks like Turner's the best piece here. If everybody ends up in, it's probably just a lot of Turner and maybe a little bit of Sabonis. What do you want to do with Indiana?
Yeah, on DraftKings, if everybody's in, I don't think anybody really stands out. Like Miles Turner at 5,900 is going to look fine, but you know how low that floor is. So It's not like it's something I'm feeling super confident about. Duarte at 5,600 playing a ton of minutes would look fine. Played 32 minutes in LeVert's first game back. I really don't think LeVert's going to impact Duarte's playing time too much. I think he'll impact his rates when he's on the floor because you're putting him out there with another high usage guy. But I expect LeVert to be taking minutes from any combination of Lamb, Brissett, Holiday, Craig before he starts taking minutes from Duarte. So I think still a reasonable option. And then Sabonis, for one, dependent on Brogdon. You know, we've talked about how his assist opportunities have plummeted this year from last year under Carlisle. I'm pulling up now to see if that's changed with Brogdon out, but we know for sure that he hasn't been getting the opportunities with him in. Because that's November 20th. With Brogdon out in the 2 games without him, Sabonis has 9 potential assists per game, which is up from the 6 that he had averaged previously, but it's still down from what he was doing last year. TJ McConnell, 14.5. So he's doing most of it. It kind of just seems like they are intentionally not having Sabonis as involved as a playmaker here. So that does make it even more difficult to get to him at 10,100.
I gave LeVert 20 minutes, by the way. I think he's just going to step into Jeremy Lamb's role for today if Lamb isn't playing. I don't expect big minutes for LeVert. If he played 16 in his return, a lot more than 20 seems implausible to me today.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he played the first half. They didn't play him in the second half. I don't anticipate he just comes out and runs into like 30 minutes or something.
We're going to get another Torrey Craig career night.
I hope not, because I won't be there.
Yeah, you and me both. Flat 3K on DraftKings, 4,200 on FanDuel.
I mean, he's viable, right? Like as a punt, because he's with Lamb out, there are minutes there, but you're most likely talking like 12 minutes, 14 minutes, something like that.
Well, he played 34 2 games ago and then followed that up with 8. So I don't know. Anywhere between 8 and 34, I feel super comfortable about.
Yeah, and there's also not a Kevin Durant / James Harden for him to go out there and defend on San Antonio.
Oh, that's disrespectful to. I can't even
Murray.
make the joke of who I want to call that guy. Doug McDermott's already out. I don't have anything else for this one. Do you?
No.
All righty, guys. Schedule for the rest of the day. Coming up immediately after this, Adam isn't going anywhere. NFL Strategy Show Recap Edition kicking off at 11. We've got the Awesemo Betting Show at 1 p.m. We've got Awesemo Fantasy Football at 2 p.m. We've got the Yahoo NFL Show at 3. The NBA Pre-Show at 4:30. It's leading you into NBA Deeper Dive from 5 to 6. NBA Live Before Lock, which I'm actually on today from 6 to 7. And then we've got NFL Live Before Lock, 7:15 Eastern time tonight. Free content as well. NBA projections are free. That should be pretty interesting to you if you're watching or listening to this show. NFL Showdown rankings and NHL ownership. So if you're looking to do any NBA, NFL, or NHL work today, we've got some free content for you, and we should be able to help you out with that. Now we're moving it on to the Portland Trailblazers taking on the Philadelphia 76ers. And by all accounts, both teams are fully healthy, minus the fact that Ben Simmons certainly isn't showing up to this one. If he does, he's probably more likely to be in a Blazers jersey. Dame is 8,300 still on FanDuel, 9,600 on DraftKings. I'm going to be playing quite a bit of Damian Lillard once again. I don't find the rest of Portland all that interesting, though. Maybe $4,400 Robert Covington, but I think this is sort of just Dame and not a lot else for me. What do you want to do? Although, let's be clear, Norm Powell for 4,800 on DraftKings is a price tag that doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, also keep an eye on his status. He's been banged up, but he did play 33 minutes yesterday. That's huge because we saw him limited in his first game back. I think he played like 25 minutes or something. It was something
23.9.
Yeah, so something completely not appealing. But then he followed it up with 33 minutes yesterday. So assuming that they don't rest him on the second half of a back-to-back, if you're going to get 33, 34 minutes from Norman Powell at 4,800, that's going to be a pretty appealing price tag. Outside of that, though, I'm still fine going to Dame at 9,600 as long as he's not getting much ownership. I don't want a popular Dame at that price point, but right now we have him projected on DraftKings for 8% ownership. I'm still interested there because the playing time's there. If you look at his average playing time for the season, it's down, but Portland's been in several blowouts already. In the competitive games, he's played 38 minutes, 40 minutes. Like, he's still getting a ton of run. And the biggest thing is he's just not shooting well, particularly from 3. 2 of 14 last night from 3. Just a horrible start to the season. He's got an 0 for 9 game, an 0 for 8 game, a 2 for 14, 4 for 11. The only game he's actually shot well from 3, he was 5 for 7 against the Clippers. He's still getting his shots up. He's still driving. He's getting fouled. He's getting to the line at the same rate that he has in the past. It's not like a James Harden situation or something. He's just not making 3-pointers. And so with Lillard, he's probably a little bit overpriced at 9,600 for his average production, but when those threes fall, he can just go get you 60 plus fantasy points. And so I like getting him when the ownership's not there just because of a shooting slump. So he looks pretty good to me in tournaments. You can always make a case for McCollum or Nurkic. You mentioned Covington being cheap, but I think Powell's the one that stands out at 4,800, assuming he plays. And then I do like getting to Dame in tournaments just for the upside.
I don't think you can make a case for Nurkic. Here's his minutes this year: 29, 25, 23 and a half, 23 and a half, 23, 25 and a half. He's just not playing. He's 7,700. I mean, you're basically saying you can go to Nurkic. He might get 32 minutes today.
They've played some small teams. They've been in a lot of blowouts. I'm with you. I'm not super confident in his playing time, but
I can't believe he's 7,700.
Yeah, I mean, even assuming he gets 28 minutes, that's still pretty expensive.
Yeah, there's been nothing in his actual playing time or his he's been good, 1.37 FanDuel points per minute over the first couple games, but I was shocked to see how little he's playing. Now, part of that I think is the fact that you have Cody Zeller, who is a more than capable backup. You have someone like Larry Nance that can very easily play the 5. They can go small to a quote unquote Robert Covington at the 5 type lineup. I think they just have some more malleability now, and that's catching Nurk where they don't have to play Nurk 32 minutes in November.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It's just that if this game's competitive, I think it's likely he plays 28 to 30 minutes. Sure. He played 29 minutes in the opener against the Kings, 25 minutes in a blowout against Phoenix, 23 minutes in a blowout against the Clippers, 23 minutes in a blowout against Memphis, 23 minutes in a almost 20-point game against the Clippers. And that's a team that we know closes small a lot anyway. And then he played 25 minutes last night, didn't get his final stint, but the Hornets were closing with PJ Washington instead of Mason Plumlee. Embiid's closing this game. So as long as Nurkic isn't in foul trouble and the game's competitive, I think he gets that last run.
Agreed. I agree with you there. It caught when I saw it this morning. It just caught me off guard. Like, wow, he has not been in these basketball games as much as I was expecting. All right, let's move from Portland to Philly. By the way, the one thing we didn't mention for Dame, he is the type of guy that has roasted Philly over the past few years. So if he's ever going to break out of it, a dominant ball handling guard against Philly feels like a time where that could happen.
Yeah, where they throw Danny Green on him for a full half and then realize that isn't working, and then like that Thibault gets some extra minutes or something. I
wish Dame's price would come up on FanDuel so I could just like have a reason to play a little bit less or be able to play more at lower ownership.
Yeah.
On the Phillies,
I hate when that happens. Like you get the shooting slump, but then the price just like free falls, and it's just like, okay, cool. I'm going to be there with 40% of the field when he finally shoots well.
Yeah. Philly side, there's really not a lot to like here. Joel Embiid's 9,700 on FanDuel, 10-3 on DraftKings. I'm happy to go to him, but I don't think his minutes upside is what I really want it to be. He can clearly just play 30 minutes and score 60 fantasy points, and everything's going to be fine for that too. Tobias Harris for me is the guy that I want to get to the most, but it's only a FanDuel play because on DraftKings, Tobias Harris is 9,100. That's not the best price. He's 7,400 on FanDuel. You have to play Tobias Harris there. That price is just simply incorrect, close to a cash game lock. That's pretty much everybody that I want to get to with any sort of volume. Maybe a little bit Maxey. I'm tired of getting beat by that dude, but it's Tobias and very little else here.
Yeah, I mean, Tobias on FanDuel looks great. On DraftKings, pretty tough sell. Like he's played really well this year, 1.16 DraftKings points per minute, but that's a really expensive price tag. I am still interested in Embiid. I think his rotation last game actually is pretty encouraging. He only played 29.7 minutes, but the Sixers ran away with that one against the Hawks. He had subbed in with 6 minutes and 52 seconds to go in the fourth quarter, only played a minute 38, and then went back to the bench with 5 minutes and 13 seconds left. If that game's competitive and he's playing that extra 5 minutes, you're finally getting that 34-minute game from Embiid that we've been waiting for. So I think that, at worst, like in 30 minutes, he can still get there. Like you said, he's averaging a little over 1.4 DraftKings points per minute so far this year. It's likely that increases based on what we've seen from him in the past. But Philly's another team where there have been a few games where Embiid loses playing time because the second unit gets hot and he doesn't have to really play in the fourth quarter. So it's another one where I think that I'm not saying it's the most likely outcome that he plays 34 minutes, but I think it's on the table, even though we haven't really seen it this year. I think there's been some extenuating circumstances, and I think his rotation last game looked really good.
He's scaring me right now, but not scaring me away from him. I'm not as like, oh man, I'm going to have 4 times the field of Embiid tonight because I got him in for 35 minutes.
Right, for sure. I think, and I'm sure this will come back to bite me because I don't mean this as a slight to Sabonis, but on DraftKings, Embiid is $200 more than Sabonis. I feel better about going to Embiid, even though he plays less minutes on average, because I don't have the same sort of concerns with his underlying rates that I do with Sabonis. I think that I just feel a little bit better about Embiid.
I'm with you. I have nothing else that I could say about Philly.
No, me neither.
DraftKings pricing tonight is not
really
easy.
Sharp. Yeah.
On to your Washington Wizards taking on the Atlanta Hawks. I'm repping the Hawks today, baby. On the shirt and everything. Rubbing it in your face. No Rui for Washington. The big question here is, will Daniel Gafford play? I do think that is an important distinction, obviously. Right now, I've got him in. I assume that he's right back into that mild split with Harrell, leaning a little bit more towards Harrell than Gafford. Now that Harrell's price is up, it doesn't matter. I don't really want to get to anything for Washington on the DraftKings side. Maybe a little Dinwiddie. I don't know. Dinwiddie's 6,900 on FanDuel. That price is better. Beal is 9,100 on FanDuel. That price is better. Those are really the only 2 guys I'm looking at. I think Washington looks bad here on DraftKings.
And DraftKings pricing is tough.
Yeah.
I mean, Beal at 10K, it's like, yeah, you can hope he has one of those 50 actual point games he's going to have, but you're paying for it. The only thing that really stands out to me is if Gafford's out, just going back to Harrell at 6,700. Dealt with a little bit of foul trouble last game against Boston. Ended up playing 35 minutes. That was with about 7 minutes in overtime, but dealt with some foul trouble there. I think that you're still expecting him to play big minutes if Gafford's out. He played 34 minutes against Atlanta 2 games ago. So I think that at 6,700, if Gafford's out and you can project Harrell for another 33, 34 minutes, he's going to look pretty good.
Last 3 games, 38, 34, 35 for Harrell, but that was obviously double OT in the last one. And he played like 7 of those minutes in double OT. So not the same sort of number, but either way, I think KCP for 3,800 on DraftKings, shooting guard, small forward, is the best play from the Wizards if Gafford plays today. And like, I use best
really
super
I don't
loosely.
really disagree with that.
Yeah, like we just got the KCP game a couple days ago, so maybe it doesn't matter, but just from the flexibility, you do get that value that you need. Otherwise, like, this is not a spot for me.
Yeah, like there's part of me that wants to like point out $4,800 Gafford, but he was not playing as many minutes as we wanted anyway. Now he's coming back from an injury. I assume that he's on the losing half of that split with Harrell if he does play.
And he might still be the second best play for Washington on DraftKings.
Right.
On Atlanta, very different story here. We're going to be, at least for me, I think we're going to be talking about Atlanta quite a bit. The only thing that's really tough for Atlanta is hashing out their actual minutes for the guys that can play anywhere from like 20 to 28. Trae Young is about 20% owned across both sites. Totally agree with it. He's 8,700 on FanDuel. John Collins, I'm just sort of happy to get to in general. He's a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy this year. Clint Capella is 6,400 on FanDuel, which I actually think is kind of a nice price tag. He's getting a ton of ownership, however. He's 7,400 on DraftKings, has not been playing a ton of minutes. Don't really like that there. Bogdanovich is in double digits in ownership. DeAndre Hunter in double digits in ownership. We haven't talked about Reddish. Kevin Huerter is like not in the rotation as much as you would expect now. He's playing like 14 minutes a game. The floor is yours. Where do you want to go with Atlanta? Because I think they have like 8 options.
Yeah, I think the pricing looks pretty favorable here on DraftKings, especially compared to some of the other teams we've talked about. It's not even like there's like a lot of glaring underpriced guys on Atlanta, but they're at least priced correctly as opposed to being overpriced. So, I think Trae Young is the starting point at 9,300. If this game's competitive, you assume he's going to play 35, 36 minutes. He's clearly really, really good. He's a, very good fantasy point per minute guy. So I think he would look like a solid option, but the front court is interesting as well, particularly John Collins. He's another one of these guys where if you look at his average playing time this year, it's a lot lower than you would like it to be, but he's been in foul trouble like constantly. The Hawks have been in a couple of blowouts as well. He did play against Philadelphia in their last game. He did play 30.6 minutes and not play the final 5 minutes and 13 seconds of that game. I think that was really, really encouraging. And the same can be said for Capella, who played 28 minutes and didn't play the final 5 minutes of that game. That's, I believe, the first time this year that we've seen Capella get one of those games where he looked like he was actually going to get 30 plus minutes. Granted, that was a game against Joel Embiid. Now you have the Daniel Gafford, Montrezl Harrell front court. Capella didn't even close against Harrell when the Hawks played the Wizards 2 games ago. So I don't think this is necessarily the same spot where they look to run him out there for low 30s in minutes. But at least we finally saw a game where they seemed willing to do it. But I still think you kind of just have to assume Capella plays 27, 28 minutes, which at 7,400 isn't going to look great. 6,400 on FanDuel looks a lot better. So Young and Collins, I think on DraftKings look good. 4,200 for DeAndre Hunter, I'm fine with. He's not a high usage player, but he can get there just through peripherals. I think if the game's competitive, you're likely to see 28, 30 minutes from him. Not a guarantee, though. When you have Gallinari, you have Williams, you have Huerter, you have Reddish. There's a ton of guys on this team that can potentially take minutes from Hunter. I think that possibly it's a situation where if Atlanta is leading in the fourth, you see more minutes for Hunter. If it's a game that they're losing, you see less minutes and more going to any of those scorers off the bench. So, but at 4,200, I think that it's a reasonable option. Reddish at 4,500, I guess, is kind of the opposite end of Hunter. He has a path to more minutes. On average, he's playing, mid-20s, but Bogdanovich in there at 5,200 as well. None of those guys really stand out. So I think it's Young and Collins stand out for me. Capella more so on FanDuel. And then Bogdanovich, Reddish, Hunter. I think that there's a good chance at least one of those guys outperforms their 4,500 or lower salary.
Yeah.
Good luck guessing which one it is.
That'll work for me. Let's move it on to the Chicago Bulls taking on the Boston Celtics. You and I have not talked since this happened. There's still no Kobe White for the Bulls here, but Patrick Williams, dislocated wrist, going to be out for likely the entire season for Chicago. Big time problem for them in that he was like the one guy that couldn't get hurt. You wouldn't expect it to be for him to be the linchpin, but if you lose DeMar, it's probably not going to matter all that much. You know, like you can make some losses across this. He's like the only good defender on this team. It's a real trickle down problem for them on a team that they don't really have any other fours either. Dusting off Derek Jones now. We'll see how that works out. We'll talk about the Chicago side to start. DeMar DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic are both around 15% owned on FanDuel. Highest owned player on DraftKings is $4,100 Alex Caruso, who I think is now going to be a fixture of their closing lineups no matter what. Everybody else is in single digits. These guys have terrible prices on DraftKings and they're better on FanDuel. Levine, $900 cheaper. DeMar, $1,000 cheaper. Lonzo, $1,100 cheaper. Vooch, $1,000 cheaper. Probably don't play most of these guys on DraftKings. Look to them a bit more on FanDuel.
Yeah, it's more of tournament plays on DraftKings. Vooch, Levine, Lonzo in particular, I think all still have ceilings at their salaries. Even DeRozan, has averaged 1.12 DraftKings points per minute this year, but on average, there's at price points where they're not likely to do all that well. The guy that actually stands out to me on DraftKings is Alex Caruso at 4,100, and that is painful to say, but I've actually been playing a pretty decent amount of him this year. It's gone surprisingly well. Every time I see him in my player exposures, I kind of cringe and assume I messed something up, and then I go back and I look, and it's just like, yeah, okay, it makes sense. He's playing 26 to 28 minutes. He's typically closing. He has averaged 0.78 DraftKings points per minute, which isn't great, but he's at least doing some things when he's on the floor. And at 4,100, if you're going to get 26 to 28 minutes from him on a slate where pricing is tight, I think that looks pretty good. You can certainly take some shots at Javonte Green if you want to. He started and played 22 minutes last game in place of Patrick Williams. But I think Caruso's the guy that I probably get the most of here. And then you can certainly kind of just throw darts at the upside of guys like Levine, Lonzo, Vooch in tournaments.
Yeah. I don't get the sense I'll go to any Derek Jones, although he is primed to take some time. He's 3,200 on DraftKings. Tony Bradley saw rotations this past time out. Alize Johnson got a rotation at the beginning of the game on their 28th. Didn't see the rotation in the second half. It's been Bradley ever since. Could be productive in backup time at the flat 3K, but it's just not going to be enough minutes is my expectation because they're not taking Vooch off for him.
Yeah, like looking through and like even looking through the roster, I was like, okay, this is a big Boston front court. Maybe they go with something different and throw like a bigger four out there. There isn't one. Like,
no, they don't have it.
It's not Troy Brown. Like, it's not Derek Jones. It's not.
No, he's in San Antonio now.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately for them. On the Boston side, this feels like the same thing that I've been saying, but there's a little bit of value. Pricing is probably better on FanDuel. Highest owned guy in this game is Al Horford at 10.8% on DK, where he's 6,500. Al Horford is 7,600 on FanDuel right now because apparently I downloaded a salaries file from 2015. Jason Tatum is 10% owned on FanDuel. I think that is fine, but no one is really popping all that heavily from Boston. I actually have a little bit of interest in Dennis Schroeder, 5,600 on DK, or Robert Williams, 6,100. But again, center's sort of loaded. What are you doing with Boston? Because this is the first team where I'm a little bit over the ownership numbers.
I like Al Horford. That shouldn't be surprising to you for sure.
I was going to say, it's not surprising to me. Maybe the public doesn't know as much.
Yeah. I expect him to play around 30 minutes. He's been extremely productive so far this year. 1.32 DraftKings points per minute is the highest on the team. Leads the team with a 17.9% rebounding percentage. He has a 15.8% assist percentage, 18.6% usage rate. He's just contributing in every category. In terms of rebound chances this year, he is first with 15.5 rebound chances per game, averaging 30.3 minutes per game. That's a full rebound chance better than Williams, and Williams is averaging 3 more minutes per game. So you're seeing Horford sort of just dominate rebounds when he's on the floor. I think 6,500 on DraftKings, especially because he's power forward eligible as well, looks like a really, really good salary to me. Robert Williams is still fine at 6,100. He does still have a ceiling, especially because of the block, the defensive stat upside that he gives you. But I do like him less when Horford plays, just because you are seeing Horford dominate the rebounds. In the 3 games Williams has played with Horford active this year, he's averaged 0.85 DraftKings points per minute. He only has a 12.4% rebound percentage. So I think Williams is okay. I prefer Horford for $400 more.
Okay. Man, that one's tricky for me. I don't know what to do between those two guys yet. Luckily, on FanDuel, they're 7,400 and 7,600, and it makes my decision significantly easier.
You said
they're 7,400 for Robert Williams, 7,600 for Horford on FanDuel. So of all the incredible value that exists out there, Al Horford being $1,100 more expensive than he is on DraftKings makes my life so much easier to deal with. What do you think of Schroeder today at 5,600? I'm asking because last 4 games, 33 minutes, 36 minutes, 34 minutes, double OT in the last one, but played 43. At the very least, he's still out there for a lot of it. I gave him 32 minutes here. I think for 5,600, that's an interesting price for him.
Who was out last game?
Smart and Robert Williams.
Okay. Yeah, I'll say because the starting lineup looked weird. It's tougher with guys not being out. I still think 5,600 is okay. Like, I still think you're probably getting 28 to 30 minutes from him. Probably.
I have no reason to think that he wouldn't be playing 30 if he's done it in 5 of the 6 games they've played so far. Even with people out periodically, like, that's still a lot.
Yeah, but they've had guys out in like every game.
Horford and Josh Richardson in the first one. Nobody in the second one where he played 23, but that was flat across the board. Only Tatum got to 30. Jaylen Brown was out for the 3rd game. Schroeder played 33. Al Horford was out for game 4. Schroeder played 36. Nobody out for game 5, unless you want to say that it was like Langford or something like that. Schroeder at 34. I don't know. I'd say anywhere in 28 to 34 is real for me today.
Yeah, I agree with that. And at 5,600, I think that's fine. Because the way I look at it is, so he's averaged about 0.95 DraftKings points per minute this year. Let's say you get 28 minutes from him at 5,600. There's still a path to success there. And on average, he's kind of just giving you like a mediocre score. But there's a path to success. And there is still room for him to play more minutes. So like you could easily get a closing lineup here of Smart, Schroeder, Brown, Tatum, Horford, or Williams. Yeah. Like, you don't have to have Williams and Horford closing alongside each other here. I would actually think it's probably pretty likely that you don't against Chicago's small front court. So, or small 4. Vooch not small, but I think that I think Schroeder's a good play at 5,600. I'm just a little concerned to see what the minutes look like in games where Brown and Horford and Smart are all playing.
And part of my appeal here is the fact that we have him projected for 4% ownership. And to me, that looks like a GPP play where I don't think we've been finding him all that easily so far. Anything else for Boston?
No.
I don't know how the hell we're going to get through these next 4 games in 18 minutes, but we're about to give it a shot. That's for sure. Sponsor on this bad boy, that would be Yahoo Fantasy Sports. We got a deal for you. You can get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. To qualify, you got to be new to Yahoo. Sign up for an account in the link in the description of this video. Make a deposit and play. That's all you got to do. Yahoo will send us your name. Once you play in your first paid contest, we will reach out to you with a coupon code. If you need immediate access, please contact support@awesemo.com. You can also claim a free $10 below, which can be used to enter any Yahoo contest. Make sure you're using our DFS tools and projections. We've got them specifically designed for Yahoo, so gives you your best chance to win. But follow all of those rules, follow the links in the description, and you will be hooked up with a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. We're on to Toronto and the New York Knicks. This news broke straight up before the show started. We know no Pascal Siakam, questionable tag on Nerlens Noel, but Scotty Barnes doubtful for this one for Toronto, which is pretty important and going to cause some trickle-down effects. I just don't know if it trickles into anybody that I want to get to a lot. Fred VanVleet and OG Anunoby are around 10% owned on FanDuel. Gary Trent is around 10% owned on DraftKings. Who do you think gets the biggest benefit here for Toronto being out? I don't see anybody as like a no doubt about it play in this one, other than I'm going to get to more Fred VanVleet at 8K. I just need him to participate in basketball games moving forward. What do you want to do with Toronto?
Boucher at 4K?
So that was the first thing that I looked at. He's basically not playing alongside of Precious. All of his run is coming alongside of Khem Birch. And I don't know how, to me, that felt like a distinction on purpose.
but
It's like 30 possessions or something.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm kind of just viewing it as he's mostly been the backup to Barnes, right?
Maybe. I feel like Nick Nurse is a coach that is going to try to like maintain logic in his lineups. And I feel like that's a goal of his to have Boucher with Birch.
But either way, there's going to be more minutes available. Like even if the starting lineup, let's say they slide OG down and you start Mikhailuk in place of Scotty Barnes.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's a big Knicks front court, but you can use OG. He's fine. Yeah. So like, let's say they do that. You're still taking like 35 minutes out of this lineup in the front court where unless they're going to just like give a ton of minutes to Mikhailuk and Banton's going to play a bunch alongside Van Vliet, which would seem kind of unlikely. But
I gave Bonga 2 rotations.
Yeah, that's reasonable, I guess. I don't know. I just at 4K with Boucher, it's a spot where like even if he plays 18 minutes, there's a path to success. But I think that like even if he gets to like 22 minutes or 23 minutes, he's good.
By the way, I gave him 21 minutes. I did give him a mild increase, but I am nervous that he would just immediately step into the role and play 28 to 30 because it seems like they just hate him always.
He's necessarily doing that unless he starts.
Okay.
If he starts, like go crazy with his minutes, but
100%.
Yeah, I'm not giving him some like crazy bump if he comes off the bench, but I don't think he needs it. I think we were already getting to the point where it was starting to be like mix in a little Boucher in tournaments because he's getting solid backup minutes now. I don't think he needs that much more to be a good play. And similarly, I mean, you can kind of do the same thing with Birch. The only difference is 1, he's not as productive as Boucher, and 2, he's only center eligible in DraftKings, so he's a lot less appealing. But like you could potentially see, barring foul trouble, Achua play 4 minutes more than he normally does. Birch play minutes alongside of him against a big front court. Like you can see different rotations here, but I think that Boucher is the guy that I feel the best about.
Should it be Banton? Flat minimum on DraftKings.
I think Banton's playable because you could theoretically get lineups where Van Vliet moves down and you get the, smaller lineups that way where it's like Banton, Van Vliet, Trent, OG, center.
Do you know how big Banton is, by the way?
No.
I didn't know this either. He's 6'9".
Is he really?
Per cleaning the glass, he's 6'9". He looks like he's 12 feet tall in the picture that they use.
Is he like skinny?
I'm going to be, look, man, I don't know a lot about it. Toronto sucks this year. I've not been catching a lot of Raptors games.
I just know where his minutes have been coming from.
Same.
Google lists him at 6'7", 204.
Yeah. Cleaning the glass has him at 6'9". Either way, not 6'2" like I had been picturing.
Yeah, I just assumed. But either, so point being, you can have a Van Vliet and Banton backcourt.
Yeah, unquestionably, he can play with any sort of combination here because of his size.
Right. And he's played well this year, too.
Yeah.
So
0.92 FanDuel points per minute so far this season.
Yeah, I think that there's different ways this can go. I think the main point is that you can get value off this Toronto bench, whether it's 4K Boucher or 3K Banton.
I think the most interesting thing for Banton is the fact that, this ownership isn't updated for Barnes being out. I assume it climbs a little bit, but if he's unowned, that's the guy that I want to take the flyer on because I don't think that it can hurt you. And he's already getting minutes. But if you told me that he played 28 minutes today, that would not shock me at all. They got to go somewhere.
Right.
Well, maybe they don't. This is Toronto. 5 guys can play 40 minutes tonight and it won't matter at all.
Well, yeah, but you need the 5th guy.
Yeah, well, everybody else then gets their normal 12-man rotate or 12-minute rotations. But everybody, OG is going to play 40 tonight. Right. Gary Trent's going to play 40. Van Vliet's going to play 40.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is where's Barnes is 40? Because
Svi Mikhailuk, Sam Decker, Isak Bonga. Right, this Toronto team sucks.
They don't usually do that, though.
No, they don't.
That's not Nurse's MO usually.
No, not at all.
So, I mean, I think that you should be setting rules. I don't even think you can play Boucher and Banton together, I think, just because they're so cheap. But Banton has a clear path to success, and he's priced to the point where he's not a terrible play anyway, just as the backup. Same for Boucher. Mikhailuk at 3,600 isn't as strong a fantasy producer as those guys, but it wouldn't be surprising if he got 28, 30 minutes here. These guys are all cheap and I think all really useful value options. Just I wouldn't play more than two of them together, I don't think, but I'm fine kind of just mixing and matching these guys.
Final question here, because we're going to have to really shoot this one out of a cannon to finish up by 11 o'clock. Who do you think starts?
Van Vliet, Trent.
Van Vliet, Trent, and Anunoby for sure are starting.
Yeah. And so is Achua. It was more, I'm trying to think what my guess is between Mikhailuk and Boucher. My guess is Mikhailuk to keep the second unit more intact.
Yeah, agreed. I'm with you. All right. By the way, this is a terrible game. Both teams are really slow. Good defense. Like, it's Raptors Knicks is not the best. Highest owned guy for the Knicks is 11% owned Julius Randle on DraftKings. There's not much else here for me. I don't even see anybody that jumps out. 5K Mitchell Robinson, but again, I can name 27 centers that are priced in this area and they all look good. Is the ceiling there? Yes. Otherwise, I don't really know how to prioritize the Knicks.
Yeah, same can be said for Randall. He looks good. He's similarly priced to Sabonis. He's similarly priced, to guys like Embiid at center. So I think he's a solid option. I also don't think he's like a huge priority compared to the guys priced around him.
Do you have anything else for the Knicks?
Kemba is seemingly remembering how to play basketball.
Yeah. He could just as easily play 20 minutes today and they close with Derrick Rose. I hate
for sure. Yeah, that's always there. But I think that we're seeing it lean or trend more toward Kemba being the starting point guard and the actual point guard.
All right, we're going to keep it moving. 10 minutes to go. Denver Nuggets at the Memphis Grizzlies. Nugs, 1.5 point dogs, 216 total. For this one, we've got Dylan Brooks still out for Memphis, and that's it. So ownership is coming in on this one. Michael Porter Jr., chalk day once again, 25% owned on FanDuel, 20% owned on DraftKings. Jokic is projected for 18% ownership at 11K. Not so crazy when he's averaging 1.77 FanDuel points per minute. Aaron Gordon, probably the best sort of mid-tier option here, 5,300 and 5,200. Those are probably the only three guys that I'm getting to, and I will get to them.
Yeah, I'm with you on all those guys. Last guy I'm going to throw in, and you're going to love this one, is $3,400 Bones Highland. I'm not joking.
I gave him 10 minutes.
Oh, I think he plays more than that. Their second unit has been garbage this year. He finally got
run. Do you know how garbage they are? They're like minus 80 per 100 possessions.
Yeah, they're absolutely awful. Yeah. He came in, he subbed in late in the second quarter last game. Then he was fully in the rotation in place of Jeff Green in the second half, played about 10 and a half minutes, ended up playing 17 and a half in the game, finished plus 10. Not that that's, a huge deal, but when you're talking about how bad their bench unit's been. And then, this is obviously someone that had a really strong preseason as well. It kind of was like, okay, this guy's looked good, but who's he going to replace? Do we really need him in the rotation? The bench has been so bad. I think it's difficult for him not to stay in the rotation here. 3,400. If he gets 18 to 20 minutes, I think that's fine.
Do you think they're going to legitimately pull Jeff Green from this rotation?
Or Austin Rivers? Or
Austin Rivers wouldn't shock me.
I think
Jeff Green will be in their rotation at some point in time in this season. Otherwise, they're not planning this correctly.
I think at this point, it makes sense with how bad the bench has been and the fact that Highland has been good basically every opportunity he's gotten so far, to just have Highland in there and figure out based on matchups and stuff who's coming off for him, but have him as a piece of the second unit.
Yeah. Well, I did give him minutes, so whoever was touting him in chat a while back, kudos. We finally got Bones Island in the building. I don't have anything else to add other than that, though.
No, me neither.
For Memphis, Jaren Jackson Jr., 14% owned on FanDuel. That's the only guy north of 5. I don't really love the Grizzlies' prices on FanDuel. He's 31% owned on DraftKings, but because for some reason Jaren Jackson Jr. is 5,400. So at least today you'll get him on purpose instead of the way that we used to get him. Everybody else is like 8% owned. I don't see anybody standing out as clearly better than the other. We saw Brandon Clark be removed from the rotation as of late. They are going to Tillman a little bit more now. I don't know what the bottom of this looks like, but I'm going to play Jaren Jackson Jr. and mix and match with the rest of the Grizzlies.
Yeah, Jackson at 5,400 is just like a complete mispricing. Kind of wish they hadn't done that because it's been pretty fun not rostering him on DraftKings because he hasn't been that good this year. He's been playing, 30 minutes or so. He's averaging 0.95 DraftKings points per minute, but 5,400 pretty difficult to get away from, especially when the pricing is as tight as it is. $4,900 Adams, I think, is a strong option as well. You have Jokic on the other side. I would assume Adams is playing as many minutes as he can outside of foul trouble. He's been productive this year, averaging 1.13 DraftKings points per minute. So I think he's mispriced. You can make cases for Morant, Bane, Melton, but I think Adams and Jackson are the priorities.
I can't believe Jackson's 5,400. That's nuts.
Yeah.
That's like when I look at Mitchell Robinson, it's like, oh yeah, he's a decent play at 5,100. And it's like, oh, well, but I can get Jaren Jackson Jr. It just becomes a little bit different for me. But 31% owned. You start making pivots and GPPs. 2 more games to go. Orlando Magic at Minnesota. This is bad. Orlando 9.5-point dogs, 216 total. We saw Chuma Okeke make his way back. Gary Harris is questionable. That's all we've got in this one from a news perspective. Mo Bamba projected for 44% ownership at 6,600 on FanDuel. Look, I like Mo Bamba. He's been a fantasy point per minute guy this season. I'm not going to have 44% of him if that number holds. I don't think that it'll hold. Wendell Carter Jr., Jalen Suggs, Bamba, all 15 to 20% owned on DraftKings. I know I'm going back to Orlando a little bit, but what do you want to do with the Magic?
I'm going to have way too much Orlando tonight at these prices. 7,100 is fine for Bamba. Carter has hurt his rebounding rates this year, and I am a little concerned because we saw the big Bamba game last time out. That also happened to be a game where Wendell Carter Jr. hardly played 17 total minutes. I don't think that's the case going forward normally, but 7,100 I think still a reasonable price tag. 5,700 for Carter looks good, assuming he gets back to 28 minutes or so. He's been a reasonably good fantasy option this year. 1.11 DraftKings points per minute, actually leads the team. So pretty good price tag for him. You have Jalen Suggs at 5,300. I just keep going to him. He's in competitive games, typically playing around 30 minutes or so. He's getting you, 5 to 6x his salary on terrible shooting. That's just something where, it's really simplistic, but it kind of just it shows how easy it would be for him to exceed his salary when he has a 43% true shooting percentage, 26.3% usage rate, 20.7% assist percentage. I'll be going back there. Cole Anthony at 7,200. I'm still willing to get to. The rebounding numbers have been excellent. Usage rate is at 23.5%. Assist percentage is at 24%. Franz Wagner at 5K is okay as well. I think I get a lot of Orlando just mixed into lineups tonight.
Not ideal. On to Minnesota. We got to move. I won't even give my thoughts. Edwards is the highest owned guy on FanDuel at 15%. Towns at 15% on DraftKings. I would much rather get to Jokic on DraftKings. I would probably rather get to Embiid as well. Talk to me about Minnesota.
Yeah, Towns always a strong tournament option, really high ceiling, really good player overall. He's another guy, it just makes it tough to go to the Sabonis, Beal type guys when you can pay $400 or $500 more for Towns. And, I'm with you. I prefer Jokic, but Towns also an excellent option. D'Angelo Russell at 7,600, still playing 30 to 32 minutes. You would like that to be a little bit more, but does still have a ceiling there. And then Anthony Edwards at 8,200, I think priced about where he should be, maybe a little bit overpriced. So I think Towns looks the best, but even there, when you go across the position, it's tough to say he's really a priority.
And now we close it out with a literal awful piece of garbage game as the late night hammer. 2.5 hours after the 8 o'clock game start, we get Oklahoma City in Los Angeles, 11-point dogs. We've got Shea, Dort, Baisley, like the guys that can play 30 minutes today. After that, buckle up. Oklahoma City is getting beat by 15 points a game. They played 13 guys their last time out. They played 13 guys the last time out before that. It's Shea for me on FanDuel and very little else. I probably just fade most of Oklahoma City. What do you do here?
Yeah, I mean, Shea at 7,800 still looks like a strong option just because if Oklahoma City is able to keep this game close and you get 34, 35 minutes from Shea, he's very clearly underpriced. I think the salary reflects the fact that Oklahoma City is prone to blowouts. So I would say he's, appropriately priced, but has a massive ceiling there. Same can be said for Giddey at 5,200. I think he's kind of just like a last guy in type piece, but he's been productive this year. He can get you around 30 minutes in competitive games. Dort at 4,600 certainly could have a big role here defensively that gets him some extra playing time. But I think that Gilgeous-Alexander is the guy that stands out the most to me. Also, Robinson Earl, if he starts at 3,700, is not a bad punt option either, especially with power forward eligibility.
Then for the Clippers, we still know no Marcus Morris, no Serge Ibaka. These guys are getting the most ownership out of anybody. Paul George, Reggie Jackson, Nick Batum, Terrence Mann, Luke Kennard, Eric Bledsoe, Zubats, all around 10% to 20% owned, depending on who's who. Reggie Jackson, the most owned of any of these guys. Guy that's really interesting to me that's not pulling as much ownership as I thought. Flat 3K, Isaiah Hartenstein, who honestly could play the whole damn game at this point because Oklahoma City sucks so much. Play everybody from the Clippers. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, pretty much. George is fine. Obviously he's really expensive, but he's having an excellent year. Reggie Jackson is playing 34 minutes a night. He's only 6K, so that looks really good. Bledsoe somehow down to 4,700. Not really sure why, but that looks like a very good price tag. He's averaging 0.91 DraftKings points per minute so far this season. You can use any combination of Batum, Kennard. They're both going to look pretty good. Zubats at 4,800 has burdened me pretty much every night, but it's still a weak front court where even in 24 minutes, you would expect him to have success. And then I'm with you on Hartenstein as well at 3K. This is a team where I expect to have a lot of ownership. So not likely to be a lot of fun waiting on the Clippers and the Magic games to start for all of my players to get going, but I think that's where I'm likely to be at.
That's where we're at now. We got to get out of here. Turn it over to the NFL Strategy Show. Thank you guys for joining us. Please hit that like button on your way out the door. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. All that good stuff. We've got a ton of content coming up later today. Deeper dive at 5. Live before lock at 6. Adam and I will both be back for each one of those shows. Good luck tonight, everybody. Win some money. We'll be back again tomorrow morning for the Strategy Show.